Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. My guest today is John Boo Smith, and we're talking about church plant to church powerhouse, one pastor's journey. Boo, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be here.
Let me tell you about Boo. John Boo Smith, as he is affectionately called, formerly pastored Great Fork Baptist Church in Manchester, Kentucky. He then helped planted Cross Mountain Fellowship in Manchester. Boo also began Impact Outdoors, which is a ministry designed to introduce kids and young adults to the outdoors. Boo uses his love of outdoor sports such as archery, hunting, and fishing, bike riding, and camping to engage local youth with the good news of the gospel. Boo's married to Kimberly. They have 2 kids and 4 grandchildren. And so let's just jump into these questions. So before we get to the exact questions, Boo, I have to ask, tell us the story behind who started calling you Boo and how that name stick.
Yeah, well, that's been a lifelong name. From what I hear, Dr. Gray, is my dad called me when I was born. He called me Bougie. So I guess as I grew older, they understood that I wasn't very bougie. So I think they just cut it Boo.
That's
So
hilarious. So
yeah,
they shortened it. Well, I
yeah.
might try Bougie and see how that hangs works on you. All right. Well, tell us about Cross Mountain Fellowship and your ministry, Impact Outdoors. Tell us about the church and the work.
Yeah. Cross Mountain Fellowship is a Kentucky Baptist Convention church plant, and we're going into our fourth year in next February. So we've been 3 years at it now, and it's located here in Manchester, Kentucky. We're still in a storefront right now. We've actually moved places 5 different times
Wow.
because of growth, and we'd get in one building and it would outgrow itself, and so we're moving in. So we just prayed about it. So we're in the process of building a church building now,
Okay.
Miracle Mountain, it's called, here in Manchester. So we're hoping to be in that by Christmas. And so
So you
Cross
you
Mountain.
you you shared the name Miracle Mountain, and we want to get to the Impact Outdoors, but tell us about Miracle Mountain. Where did that come from, and how did it come about that you're connected to that piece of property?
Yeah, I pastored out Great Fork Baptist Church for 15 years. And the last 5 years, we began a ministry out there. The Lord led us to begin a ministry of outdoors, doing archery and camping and hiking and things like that. So we kind of outgrew where we were, with the facility we had outside. So we were looking for another place. Just to make a long story short, the Lord, through Clay County Industrial, will give us 188 acres of property to do outdoor ministry and build a church. And we got a 25 site full amenities campground up there. So that's kind of where we got the name Miracle Mountain, because it was definitely a miracle the way God worked it out, through the vision that He gave us.
So 25 site, full amenities campground,
Yes,
and
sir.
then connect us now to Impact Outdoors, the ministry outdoor work that you do.
Yeah, we were out in Great Fork one Wednesday night, and we were having a children's program, a lot of kids there, and so it was during bow season, and I'm an avid hunter, so I like to get out and hunt, and so we were looking at my bow when some of the kids came over, and we just showed it to them, sat down with them. Make a long story short, we went from that to kayaking, and then it moved into other things. So that was kind of the start of the ministry. And when I left Great Fork Baptist Church and moved to Miracle Mountain, we just kind of brought the ministry with us. Great Fork's still involved in the ministry with us up there, but we just kind of brought that ministry along with us. And it's kind of a quasi ministry of the church. But actually, Cross Mountain Fellowship Church started from Impact Outdoors. A
Okay.
lot of we have a church, and then we start a ministry. Uh,
hmm
this ministry really started our church.
So let's
So
talk about that, Boo. I know that the Lord led you to plant the church, but tell us about that process and how it got on your heart that, okay, I'm pastoring a church, a good one, and I feel led to start one. Walk us through some of that, maybe some of the own wrestling that you and your wife had to work through, and just
yeah,
what was that process like? How did you know for sure God was leading you that way?
yeah. Well, I'd been pastoring at Great Fork for 15 years, and honestly, it was a pleasure all 15 years. You have your ups and downs in church as usual, but uh, about the last 3 years, I really felt, and I've always felt that, and I don't know how to say this other than this, but that the church gathers which is a good thing. But we don't send out a lot.
Hmm.
And I think in Scripture we see the Apostle Paul sending folks out, and the church growing outward. So the Lord kind of laid that on my heart, and so we began praying. A couple of us did in church, and I actually shared the last couple of years with Great Fork Baptist what the Lord was laying on my heart. It wasn't a surprise to them when I left, which was a good thing. But my wife and I, and other people, really felt like, I think there was about 8 or 9 of us that met for the first time as Cross Mountain Fellowship under the shed at the campground. So that's kind of where it
Okay.
began.
Wow.
The group coming together. And so, yeah, I think that Lord really led us to start this church, and there was some wrestling and some things because there wasn't anything wrong at Gray Fork. It was straight. And so I think Lord just led us to start this church the last couple of years I was out there. So
How did Gray Fork respond to that sense of God's leadership on your life, Boo?
yeah, at first they really didn't understand.
Yeah.
With the leadership, and then the last year, I'll be honest with you, the last year I stood before the church and said, hey, and I don't know if this is the proper way to do this or not.
Right.
Right. But I stood before the church and said, hey, the Lord's calling me to plant a church, and I really feel that calling, so I'm going to go forward with it. And so I stayed there, and with the hopes that I could help the church find another pastor.
Right.
And I called Clear Creek and talked to Charlie over there, and just a bunch of people, and started having people come in and fill in. So I think in that process, it kind of helped the church to understand what we were doing.
Yeah.
But then so they didn't really understand. So
Yeah.
but as we left, I don't think there was any tension there or anything like that. They really understood the part. And I think communication is the biggest deal with that. We're not trying to hide anything, because we're leaving a church that's doing well and going into the same community and plant another church. So
yeah. Well, they knew you loved them. You were trying to help them. You communicated that by your actions. That you were trying to help them be prepared to move forward. And Boo, I think it is hard for folks who just really haven't answered what we would refer to as a ministry calling. It's just kind of hard to explain that to people. And then I mean, some things have been blamed on a calling. Maybe that hadn't always been a true calling, but they no doubt saw your sincerity and your sense of direction from the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of the things, that made this kind of a fluid transition, because I'd been there so long. It wouldn't, and the folks there, I think, trusted me and knew I loved them, and I trusted them. So I think that made it a lot better transition. So
yeah, well, and then so you shared that the church was actually born out of the ministry. The ministry kind of stirred up some people coming. Help us understand that a little bit better. And then what's the relationship today of the Cross Mountain Fellowship Church and Impact Outdoors? How do they work together?
Yeah, Impact Outdoors, like I say, started at Gray Fork Baptist Church, but it's not that Gray Fork Baptist Church wasn't ready for that, because man, they really in the beginning helped out with everything, but I think after we actually found a place that the Lord gave us, then I think there was an understanding that we had to move there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was that helped us on the transition too. But that ministry, and I may be wrong on this, but I think 20 years ago, parents brought kids to church, and now kids are bringing parents to church a whole lot.
Yeah, interesting.
So we saw an influx of kids. We had a couple of buses. We'd go get kids, and then parents started coming with them. We really got the parents involved in the ministry instead of just letting them be spectators.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, Todd, even if they weren't believers yet, we still them in the ministry.
Sure.
Not or anything, but we want them to understand that we love them, and they could be involved in the ministry with their children. So I think that was the start of the church. There was a lot of people that come to Gray Fork through that and got saved at Gray Fork. But I think the calling that the Lord laid on my life, and then that ministry and us getting a place just to really do that started the church, I think.
You said that there was a time when parents brought kids to church, and then now you're in an environment where you see parents bringing kids bring parents. Can you share an example of where you've seen that happen, where you outreach some children and their parents have kind of followed behind?
Yeah, sure. One of my good friends, he we were next to one of the highways there, and it was kind of a rural setting. So when somebody drove through, you kind of saw them.
Sure.
And we were outside doing archery. You could see it from the road,
Yeah.
and I saw this car keep driving back and forth. And every Wednesday night for about four or five Wednesday nights, they drove back and forth. So I kind of walked out to the road one evening, and they were driving by. I just flagged them down, and I looked in the back seat, and there was two kids, about 7 and 9. And I said, "Hey guys, y'all are more than welcome to coming over here." And they were like, "Well, we really didn't know. We were really interested, but we weren't for sure because we don't go to church there."
Sure.
So through that, all four of them have been saved. And
Wow.
yeah, so that's just one example of how the Lord used that ministry, and bringing adults to church. And so another example too, and I'll hurry through this, but just like when kids go to school, third, fourth, fifth grade, they'd be like, "Man, we're going out Grave Fork on Wednesday
Yeah.
night." And it was word of mouth, and they just everybody came.
Mm.
So and the kids brought their parents naturally. So
Yeah, that's very, very, very exciting. So, Boo, why do you think outdoor activities are a good way to reach young people today?
yeah, I think in this area, Dr. Gray, I think in this area, we're rural, woods,
Hmm.
rivers, streams, mountains, hills, whatever you want to call them. So, I grew up, outdoors. I waded the creeks here. I gigged frogs. I, did the whole thing that country boys do, I guess. And so I just took that love of the outdoors and God's creation, and He implanted that in my heart as a young man. So I think that there are one of the things I hear here in Manchester and Clay County is that there's nothing to do. Uh,
Hmm.
that's totally wrong. There's a vast amount of things to do. You just got to get outside and do them. One of our purposes or goals is to get kids off video games and get them outside. You
Yeah.
know, the first camp we had 20 bicycles there, and probably I'm going to say 50, 60 kids, and maybe five of them could ride a bicycle.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that just kind of showed us that the outdoors is what kids need to do. Not only does it get them outside and gets them healthy, but then we get to share Jesus with them through that ministry. So
So you said that you try to involve parents in the ministry where you can or in the work. Like, give an example of what does that look like? How do you plug a parent of a child who's coming to show up at your Impact Outdoors?
yeah, like when we're doing archery,
Hmm.
some adults, men and women, they want to shoot the bows just like the kids do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, we have teams that, age group teams. And so, hey, we'll say, "Hey, come over," or "Do you mind helping us, serve the food?" Or,
yep,
"Do you want to shoot the bows?" And some of them, are very apprehensive at first, but then
sure,
eventually they're comfortable, and they'll say, "What can we do?" So I don't think you push people into it, but you just
sure.
ask, they get involved with it. So,
But I've heard somebody say sometimes people fall in love with God's people before they fall in love with God,
yeah,
and they learn to trust you and learn your heart, and it opens them up to God's truth for their life, God's salvation plan.
yeah.
I love that you're doing that. Boo, what were some of the early challenges you faced as a church? I mean, you're 4 years old now, so let me ask this question first. I was with a church planter, their 10th anniversary recently. And before the service, I said, are you at a place where you feel like you're surviving? He said, no. He said, at year 5, we were surviving. He
Yeah,
said, today it feels like we're thriving. So
yeah.
where do you see Cross Mountain Fellowship in that scenario first? Are you at a place where you feel like you're surviving? And then what were some of your early challenges that folks just might not know anything about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're definitely surviving, but
Mhm.
we're on the verge of thriving. I think
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of folks, a lot of new folks coming into our church, and one of the things that I want to emphasize about church planting is, I think was one of the early things that we faced was, there's a lot of churches saying, well, you're just trying to steal our sheep, and no, we're that's far beyond. We're really trying to reach the lost, and praise God for our churches here. I think we got 23 in our Boonville Association, and so We're not trying to steal anything. That was one of the early challenges, I think.
So Boo, you're in Clay County, Kentucky, population 20,345 people, and of that population, it looks like that about maybe about 30% or so go to church. That seems like a too kind of high for me. I don't know that that's exactly a right number, but even if that's right, then it's still the vast majority is not part of any church anywhere, and you're
Yeah,
probably reaching some people that nobody was reaching.
yeah, I think so. And I love the traditional church, Dr. Gray.
Yep,
Don't hear bad about it, but
sure.
one of the things I hear from the younger people, and I'm talking, 20s up to 40s, who have kids that, they've went to traditional churches.
Hmm.
They loved them, loved the pastors, loved the preaching, the teaching, all that, but there wasn't a vast place for them to plug in.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I'm hearing from the younger folks, and seemingly and I'm not saying our church is any better or anything. I don't want anybody to hear me wrong, but our focus, our focus group is really, it's younger folks.
Hmm.
We're not trying to be an attractive church or anything like that. We're just ministering to those folks right now where we are.
Yeah.
Have some older folks in church, and man, I love them. There's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot of teachers that come out of the older group, and so I think that makes the church wise enough to understand where people are and join them to Jesus, I guess. So
Ooh, I heard Paul Badgett say this about Tommy Reed. Tommy's long-term pastor near Prestonsburg, pastors Fitzpatrick First Baptist Church. Church is thriving, and Paul used to describe Tommy and say Tommy used the culture to reach the culture, and that's
yes,
what I hear you doing. You're in a culture where folks love the outdoors. They love hunting, fishing, four wheeling, archery that you're describing, just outdoor activities. They love that. They also love that sense of community of just being together with other people from your area, and what an environment to bring the gospel in that environment. So how do you do that? So you're doing these. I mean, eh, take a minute and list off. I heard you before we got on. You talked about disc golf. Y'all designed a sound like a state of the art disc golf course. You brought somebody in who actually designs these things, and you
yeah,
built that. You do archery. You
hmm
do. I thought I heard you did you had four wheeling.
we do.
Yeah.
We,
So what else? What are some other activities that you do?
we do kayaking on the
Okay.
local river lakes over here. We used to do mountain biking. We're going to start back on that. But something I'm really excited about, uh, we have we finally bought a trailer, a covered trailer that we can put our equipment in, and
Okay.
so we're calling it Mountain to Hollers. And
Okay.
I know that sounds corny, but
No.
and a lot of folks coming to our or what we call the mountain. That's what we call it. We're going to start taking the mountain to the people.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
and
good.
I've talked to several churches that are willing to come in and do missions work with us this spring and summer. We're actually going to take the archery and the axe throwing and things like that up these hops.
Yeah,
And
that's good. I hope you got good insurance policy, Boo. I'm pretty sure that you probably do.
we
So how do you tie the gospel in? So get us to that. You're doing axe throwing training and competition, or you're doing both archery. How do you bring Jesus into those conversations?
yeah, well, like we first, we build a relationship with these folks, like you were talking about early. And just in a perfect example, we were at the river doing kayak, and we set up a sign that said free kayak rides and hot dogs. We had 250 people show up and give them free kayak rides. And so, and I'm not saying anything about this lady, but there was a lady there. She said, "When are we going to do the devotion?" She said, "It'd be
Yeah.
so good to just get out there on the kayak and preach the gospel." And I said, "Well, really, we are the devotion."
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is we begin to love those folks, and they see Jesus in us. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, we ask people if they know the Lord, every
Yeah.
time we share. But a lot of times people say, what is it that's different about you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Who? So that's the majority of the people that come to our church, just like that. You
So
know,
you're using personal evangelism that you're doing and that you're hoping that your church members are doing as they're interacting with people. And
Yeah.
then you are hoping they actually attend church services where they're going to hear the gospel preached. Is that your primary
Yes.
approach to sharing?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things. It's about kingdom growth. If they don't come to our church, then we're going to send them to a good Bible teaching church. They don't
Yeah.
always have to church. We want them to go to church and know Jesus.
So, Boo, you've now planted it? You're planting a church. It's growing. It's trying to get to a place of what you consider survival, moving toward thriving. What are some crucial steps toward trying to grow a healthy church from your experience? You've pastored a traditional church, and now you're pastoring a church plant.
Yeah, I think those steps are pretty simple things that we can follow. One would be prayer, prayer, prayer.
Yeah.
And getting people together and praying, helping the congregation and the folks in the core group understand that that's the found. Jesus' foundation, but and preaching, teaching the word. The whole counsel of the word, not being afraid that you're going to get thrown out of church for preaching something that that might be controversial in
Yeah.
people's eyes. Um, a lot of patience, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Patience, fellowship, discipleship.
Yeah.
But one of the overriding things, Dr. Gray, that I've seen is desperation and not
Mm.
only dedication.
Yeah.
People can be dedicated to a church, and dedication only lasts for a while.
Yeah.
But desperation for Jesus, then that makes the change.
Yeah.
And the old saying goes, 10% of the people do 100% of the work. Well, you focus not only on that 10%, but you focus mostly on that 10% that's willing to go out and do the work and disciple them and show
Mm.
them what it is, and then they're making disciples, and so it just goes on and on. So
That's really good, Boo. You're growing leaders. You're doing leadership development, and you're multiplying your life and ministry that way. So you've got a burden on you, no doubt about it. But that burden's not quite as heavy if that's Moses and Jethro right there. That, hey man, you're killing yourself and you're killing these people. You got to do something different. Well,
yeah,
good work for you, Boo. What are a couple of misconceptions about church planting? People might view church planting a certain way that maybe it isn't exactly accurate.
yeah. One of the misconceptions, the first one, is that we have enough churches here already
Okay. Yeah.
on every corner. But like you said earlier, there's 20,000. I did this research when I was going through the KBC church planning. Um, I did this research. There's 20,000 some people in Clay County, but less than 1,000 of them attend a Baptist church on a given
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
That's one of the, not answers, but just one of the truths that I give people back. The church, and I'm not saying we aren't, but the church here seems like that we're just not taking the church outside the church. And, we're kind of sitting back waiting for people to come to church, which is not a bad thing. But, again, I think, like in our church, and I'm just telling you what's happened here in the last year and a half. We've got 23 churches in our association here, I think, and there's several of them without pastors. Well, there's been 2 pastors that come out of our church that are pastoring these other churches.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah. So you're
Uh,
raising up leaders, and those leaders are they're seeing a church reaching some people, so they're going to carry that enthusiasm
yeah,
with them to try and help a church experience a strengthening season.
yeah. So I guess another misconception about church planning is that it'll die very quickly.
Yeah.
Around here, and I don't know about where you guys are, but there's a lot of churches that pop up and they're going to storefront, and
Yeah.
they'll, kind of same thing we've done.
Yeah.
So people look at that storefront and say, hey, that's not going to be there long, so I don't want to go there. I don't want to get involved in that because it's just going to die out. But I think that's one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons that we're wanting to get our own place, get more established.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not about the building, but I think once we get the building, we'll be more established. We'll be on the mountain up there, and we're also getting another building, Dr. Gray, that's outside. It's a multi-purpose building with a gymnasium in it, and the reason that we're doing that is we have a soccer field right there. We had,
Okay.
I think, we had 158 kids playing soccer last year. So on any
Wow.
given Sunday, there'd be 400 people up there. So
Wow. My goodness.
we want to give the opportunity. If it's raining, we can't do the archery outside. We're going to do it inside. We're going to do cheerleading, basketball, volleyball, and it's all going to be kid centered in that building.
God can change the world from Clay County, Kentucky.
I,
A work can happen right there that'll impact the entire globe. Hey, so you told us a couple of stories. Is there another story of a changed life that you've seen through the work of Cross Mountain Fellowship or Impact Outdoors?
yeah, if I can do this without crying.
Okay.
Um, um, Several years ago, there were a couple kids that came to our archery at Gray Fort, and so we just, we try to get a family to each kid, if you understand what I'm saying.
Sure.
Some kids aren't as blessed as others.
Right.
So we try to do mentorship and we try to do things like that with these kids, plug them into a family. And so there were some kids came out. One of those kids was a very good archer, and he loved it. He fell in love with archery, and so we just kept mentoring him and mentoring him. Now, I'll be honest with you, we lost him for a couple of years as he was getting older, 14, 15 years old. This is just a wonderful young man, and so he came back and he began to do archery again. So he was a little older then, so I plugged him into actually leading the archery. And through that, he come to know Jesus, got baptized, and now today he is 18 years old. He got an archery scholarship to college.
Wow.
And thriving and growing in the Lord. I talk to him almost every day. He's got a question or something that he's read in the Word, and so that's life that I can see that has changed tremendously.
My goodness, I love those stories. Is
Yeah.
he on a college? Is he living on a college campus, Boo?
Yes, sir. He's at Alice Low.
Okay, we got to get him connected to a good campus ministry over there,
Yep.
and a good church, good local church. Boo, what advice would you give to a pastor or church considering planting or replanting a church?
Yeah. Again, prayer is the foundation. Praying, understanding your calling. Uh, One of the things that I dealt with at first was not really being afraid or scared, but when the Lord asks you to do something outside the box of church,
Yeah.
to step out and do that, people look at you like I've never heard of that. That's
Sure.
and I've even had people say, when you all first started archery, I thought you guys were crazy. Are doing this when and not being afraid to walk in faith. The Bible says we walk by faith and not sight.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, not being afraid to do what God asks you to do.
And Boo, that's a real fear of man issue, and anybody that follows the Lord, you're gonna have to have a funeral for the fear of man at some point in your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I came to the part where that funeral happened.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Dr. Gray, there was a lot of folks talking when I left Gray Fort. And some of it, not all of it was bad.
Sure.
I got a lot of encouragement from pastors, but some pastors came and said, "Why are you leaving? I mean, there's nothing wrong. The church is going great. It's growing. Why are you leaving?" And my simple answer was, because God's telling me to.
Yeah,
And
that's all you got. I mean, your ministry to a place is only as good as your calling there, and that calling is what sustains you while you're there, because it's not easy, and there are plenty of days you feel like quitting and giving up, and those days usually start with the M and end in day. Hey, last question, Boo. Tell us one leadership lesson that you had to learn the hard way.
Okay. Again, I said 10% of the church does 100% of the work. I've got a couple. Don't overuse those who do the work.
That's good.
I have a tendency to see the Lord moving in people and seeing them desperate for God and moving. And I have a tendency to go to those people first.
Sure.
And I guess it's just common sense, and that's the way it works from a core group. One thing that I want to encourage a pastor who's thinking about starting a new church or redoing church, whatever you want to call it, is to get a good core group and to get a good our sending church is Living Water Church out of Mount Sterling, Grant County.
Oh yeah,
Grant. My daughter actually leads worship there, and so
okay.
she's at Mount Sterling, so that's how we got hooked up. But anyway, overuse of people who are willing to do the work. Be careful about not burning out yourself.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Boo, because you're a go-getter and you're a hard worker and you have visionary ideas and all those ideas require energy. What do you do to take care of yourself and make sure that that you don't sideline yourself by overdoing it.
I take a good hike in the woods about 3 days a week.
Okay, that's good.
On their property, we're out in nowhere. So, just to be honest with you, some days I just go back there and scream. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
that's good. I understand.
Get it
Well,
out. Yeah.
brother, we're grateful for you. We're really grateful to get to partner with you. Kentucky Baptist churches, all of them that give through cooperative program are part of your ministry. They've invested in the work that you're doing there, and your church is giving back so that the same thing's being multiplied in the lives of others. That's just the way cooperation works, and we're grateful to get to partner with you. There'll probably be something in the comments about how church could partner with you and reach out if they want to know more. Sometimes churches like to take mission trips, and yours would be a great place to do that. Brother, thank you for your ministry, answering God's calling, and thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Gray or Todd. Thank you for that. I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate your hard work with KBC and everything that KBC does through the cooperative program.
All right. Thank you, Boo.
Thank you, brother. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches for churches to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program, which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership